monopoly, the national monopoly, the BBC, which has become the line, in my view, has gone so far left that anyone who speaks common sense appears to be far right in your terms. Well, I'm not far right. I am a normal punter, okay? And I want my country back. I don't want all of the piffle and the rubbish that you lot peddle. I want a country that works, is at peace with itself, and is founded upon the Christian principles which have served us extremely well for many thousands of years.
You're a man, aren't you, in reality, Mr. Lowe? You're a man with money and a grudge and a social media account who airs his prejudices on X and gets hearing because you got the back of Elon Musk.
Well, there you go. This is GB News Originals. I'm Emily Carver. Please do give this video a like and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. And do leave a comment. Let me know what you think.
You quote, and have often quoted, what you say is a prediction that white Britons will be a minority in 2063. Are you aware that by the definitions used in that particular report, King Charles is not a white Briton? Do you think he is a white Briton?
Well, many people have different interpretations of that, Nick. I mean, we can split hairs, but I think...
Well, you're not splitting hairs. Do you think the monarch of this country is a white Briton?
Quite clear, and I think most British people, if you speak to them, would agree. And that is why
King Charles a white
Britain's
Briton?
membership is growing very fast, and your listeners are dropping equally fast, because you don't reflect actually what's happening.
Why don't you answer the question now we've got you on?
You try and whitewash all of the things that are happening.
Is King Charles a white Briton, Rupert Lowe?
You peddle DEI, you peddle all of the malign agenda, which British people have got bored of.
Right.
So
they're bored of people ignoring the questions, Mr. Lowe. The reason I ask you, and it's a serious question.
Questions. It is a fact that by 2063, white British people will be a minority on current trends. I don't think anyone disputes that.
What I was putting to you is that the basis of that forecast, which is widely disputed and based on a whole series of assumptions that none of us know whether they'll be true or not, is that you're only called a white Briton if both of your parents were born in this country. So because Prince Philip was born in Greece, King Charles is not, under your definition, treated as a white Britain. Is King Charles a white Briton?
Britain's membership is growing very fast, and your listeners are dropping equally fast.
Let's start with that title, Restore Britain. What does it mean?
It means restoring Britain to something more akin to that which it used to be, which was a very prosperous country with very low national debt. Everyone understood who we were, what we were, and how our society and our sort of country worked. And I think that has changed dramatically over the last, well, really since Tony Blair. And, I think the British people can see and feel their country slipping away from them. And we need to start to, I think, adopt a more sensible, logical route to rebuilding our national wealth and to rebuilding our society.
You said in a recent tweet, I'm not going to sit back and watch Britain become an Islamic country. What is the evidence that, in your words, we are, quotes, hurtling towards being an Islamic country?
Well, let me ask you, Nick, have you read our 219-page rape gang inquiry report, which we did? I don't think the BBC has covered it at all.
Well, it's covered the rape gangs, but let me ask you to answer the question.
Hang on, have you read that report?
I haven't read the whole report, no, but what's the evidence for your claim?
Why not, Nick? That is a very important part of what we're talking about today.
Okay. Let's come to that.
What we're seeing is the gradual Islamification of Britain.
What's the evidence for that?
Or the silent jihad, if you like. And people like the BBC, our national monopoly, which, as you know, I would defund responsibly very quickly should I acquire power. The point is, you have been complicit in watching this gradual spread of the Islamicization of Britain, which basically is changing the nature of everything, with them allowed to pursue a parallel system of Sharia courts.
What I asked you for was the evidence.
And
the evidence that we're hurtling towards being an Islamic country.
You didn't cover it once.
What's the evidence for the fact that we're...
You're supposed to inform, educate and entertain with complete impartiality. Well, you're not doing that.
Well, look, just briefly, Mr. Lowe, because you've raised it a couple of times, but I want us to have an interesting exchange of views.
You asked me the question,
Yeah,
Nick.
no, I'll briefly give you an answer, which is we covered rape gangs in detail. We covered the National Inquiry. You're talking about us covering your individual report. Let me ask you again, because I'm asking about your words.
Rupert Lowe tears into the BBC live on air, and the Nigel Farage feud just got uglier. Right, settle in, because this one is an absolute car crash of British broadcasting, and I mean that in the best possible way. A sitting MP going head-to-head with one of the BBC's most senior presenters, tempers fraying, accusations flying, and a political rivalry that refuses to die. If you think Westminster is boring, you have clearly not been paying attention this week. Let's dive straight into it. Before we go any further, if you are new here, this is Britain Underneath, the channel that actually tells you what is going on beneath the polished press releases and the carefully rehearsed soundbites. If that sounds like your kind of thing, hit subscribe now, because trust me, you are going to want to be here for what comes next. So here is the scene. Thursday morning, the nation's favourite current affairs programme, the Today programme on Radio 4. The guest is Rupert Lowe, once a Reform UK MP, now the leader of his own outfit, Restore Britain. The interviewer is Nick Robinson, a man who has grilled prime ministers for breakfast and rarely blinks. And within minutes, this interview stops being an interview and starts being something closer to a full-blown confrontation. The subject on the table was supposed to be simple enough. Lowe had recently extended something of an olive branch to his former party, Reform UK, suggesting the possibility of cooperation. Robinson was not about to let that slide without a reminder of just how bad blood had gotten between Lowe and Nigel Farage. He brought up Lowe's own past words, some genuinely brutal descriptions of Farage, questioning whether Farage himself had taken the peace offer remotely seriously. And that is when things started to unravel.
Lowe was not interested in relitigating the history in the way Robinson wanted. Instead, he pointed the finger squarely at his former colleagues, accusing them of manufacturing a situation that saw him reported to the police and ultimately removed from the party. For context, Reform UK did report Lowe to the Metropolitan Police back in March 2025 over claims he had made threatening remarks toward the party's then chairman. Lowe always denied it, and by May 2025, prosecutors confirmed there was not enough evidence to bring any charges. That is not a small footnote. That is a man who was accused, investigated, and cleared, still carrying the scar tissue of that ordeal live on national radio. Quick pause. Quick favour. If you're enjoying how this channel actually digs into the detail instead of just skimming the headlines, do us a solid and subscribe. It genuinely helps this channel grow, and it means you will not miss the next deep dive.
One more time.
I'm sorry.
One more time. What is the evidence that Britain, in your words, is hurtling towards becoming an Islamic country?
It's quite plain for everybody to see when you see very large parts of the country who are running a parallel system. And you are seeing, as a result of that, as I said to you just now, the manifestation of Pakistani Muslim rape gangs. Most of these people are Pakistani Muslims, most of them from one part of Pakistan, Mirpur. And if you had the intellectual appetite to actually read the report, I don't think you'd even need to ask me this question.
Well, the reason I ask you the question is this, because you quote, and have often quoted, what you say is a prediction that white Britons will be a minority in 2063. Are you aware that by the definitions used in that particular report, King Charles is not a white Briton? Do you think he is a white Briton?
Well, many people have different interpretations of that, Nick. I mean, we can split hairs, but I think...
Well, you're not splitting hairs. Do you think the monarch of this country is a white Briton?
It's quite clear, and I think most British people, if you speak to them, would agree. And that is why
King Charles
Restore
a white
Britain's
Briton?
membership is growing very fast, and your listeners are dropping equally fast, because you don't reflect actually what's happening.
Why don't you answer the question now we've got you on?
You try and whitewash all of the things that are happening.
Is King Charles or White Britain,
climate
Rupert Lowe?
change, you peddle DEI, you peddle all of the malign agenda, which British people have got bored of.
Right.
So
they're bored of people ignoring the questions, Mr. Lowe. The reason I ask you, and it's a serious
question. I'm not ignoring any
questions.
It is a fact that by 2063, white British people will be a minority on current trends. I don't think anyone disputes that.
What I was putting to you is that the basis of that forecast, which is widely disputed and based on a whole series of assumptions that none of us know whether they'll be true or not, is that you're only called a white Briton if both of your parents were born in this country. So because Prince Philip was born in Greece, King Charles is not, under your definition, treated as a white Britain. Now, let me go on and ask you a different question. In the recent election, the by-election,
I did come on to speak about ostensibly the economic paper we've just put out and about the issue with Nigel Farage. And
I'm going to come to Nigel Farage.
You've managed to turn it into a discussion about British people becoming a minority, white British people by 2063. So look,
it's very important
please
to you.
Move on to another question.
I thought it was a courtesy to you because it's something you care passionately about. Here we are.
Please move on. Yeah, let's get on to something more constructive.
Well, you referred in a recent tweet to British areas in Manchester, and you compared them with more Muslim areas. Are you saying that Muslims in Manchester are not British?
I don't think a lot of the Muslims in Manchester are integrating into British culture.
Are they British?
And if you go to Curry Mile, where I was the other day while I was campaigning with Marlon West, who did extremely well in the mayoral election there, you see entire communities who basically are pursuing their own culture, their own religion, and their own agenda.
Are they British?
Now, successful immigration involves accepting the faith and the structures that exist within the countries you go and settle in. And if you go and live in Saudi Arabia, you go and live in Dubai, you have to accept the prevailing culture there. Otherwise, you're not welcome.
Okay.
And I don't think anyone would disagree that large parts of Britain...
Back to the chaos. Lowe explained that Restore Britain exists to rally what he calls common sense thinking, and he did not hold back, accusing the BBC of drifting so far to the left that anyone speaking plainly now gets branded as extreme. He was adamant that he is not on the fringes, describing himself as an ordinary voter, simply wanting his country back, one built on peace, stability, and the Christian values he believes have underpinned Britain for centuries. Robinson was not letting that pass unchallenged either. He pushed back hard, suggesting Lowe's platform owes something to his wealth, his personal grievances, and the amplification he receives thanks to a certain very famous owner of a certain very famous social media platform. You can guess who that is. Lowe did not really engage with that line of attack directly. Instead, he doubled down on his version of events, insisting his attempt to extend an olive branch to Farage had been made in good faith, despite what he described as shabby treatment at the hands of his former party. And here is where it gets genuinely spicy. This entire clash is unfolding against the backdrop of reports that Farage himself is increasingly worried Lowe's breakaway party could dent his own ambitions of one day walking into Downing Street. Farage has already been asked directly whether Restore Britain could ever strike a deal with reform, and his answer was telling. He suggested that even without winning a single seat, Lowe's party could still do serious damage to reform's chances at the ballot box. That is not the language of a man who is relaxed about the competition. Right, before we push further into the most explosive part of this interview, subscribe to Britain Underneath if you have not already. Seriously, it takes 2 seconds, and it means every future breakdown like this one lands straight in your feed. Now to the moment that really lit the whole segment on fire. Robinson asked Lowe to explain a previous comment in which he vowed he would never sit back and allow Britain to become an Islamic country. Rather than answering directly, Lowe turned the question back on Robinson, asking whether he had read Restore's report into grooming gang failures. When Robinson pressed him for actual evidence behind claims of a quiet, creeping Islamification of Britain, Lowe accused the BBC itself of being complicit in ignoring the issue and controversially claimed parallel religious courts were being allowed to operate outside the country's legal framework. Worth being clear here, Britain's legal system is entirely secular, and while some voluntary religious councils do exist within certain communities, they hold no official legal standing whatsoever. That distinction matters, and it is exactly the kind of nuance that gets lost the moment two people start talking over each other on live radio. Which is precisely what happened next. The interview descended into a genuine shouting match, both men speaking over one another, Lowe insisting the BBC had failed to properly cover Restore's grooming gang inquiry, and Robinson firing back that the corporation had in fact covered the scandal extensively, demanding Lowe simply explain his own words rather than attacking the messenger. Lowe's response was to admit he had essentially stopped listening to the programme altogether. It did not end when the microphones went off either. Robinson took to social media afterwards, publicly questioning why, given a lengthy and prominent slot, Lowe chose to spend so much of it attacking the BBC rather than answering the actual questions put to him. A fair jab, and one that has only added more fuel to a row that was already burning fairly hot. So where does this leave things? You have got a former Reform MP turned rival party leader, a national broadcaster accused of bias, a feud with Nigel Farage that refuses to cool down, and a general election battlefield where every single percentage point could decide who ends up in Downing Street. This is not a sideshow. This is exactly the kind of undercurrent that shapes British politics long before the polls open. That is the story. And honestly, this one is far from finished. Stick with us, take a breath, because British politics never stays quiet for long, and Britain Underneath will be right here breaking down whatever happens next. If this kept you hooked, do the channel a favour and subscribe. It genuinely helps us keep doing this properly. See you in the next one. It did not end when the microphones went off either. Robinson took to social media afterwards, publicly questioning why, given a lengthy and prominent slot, Lowe chose to spend so much of it attacking the BBC rather than answering the actual questions put to him. A fair jab, and one that has only added more fuel to a row that was already burning fairly hot. So where does this leave things? You have got a former Reform MP turned rival party leader, a national broadcaster accused of bias, a feud with Nigel Farage that refuses to cool down, and a general election battlefield where every single percentage point could decide who ends up in Downing Street. This is not a sideshow. This is exactly the kind of undercurrent that shapes British politics long before the polls open. That is the story. And honestly, this one is far from finished. Stick with us, take a breath, because British politics never stays quiet for long, and Britain Underneath will be right here breaking down whatever happens next. If this kept you hooked, do the channel a favour and subscribe. It genuinely helps us keep doing this properly. See you in the next one.